Okay, so I might not pronounce this name correctly, but here we go. I listened to Sam Harris's latest podcast with Alon de Botton. I think I said that right. Um, and he said some pretty interesting things, like all through the podcast. But there's one thing I have to maybe not disagree with, but criticize. And it's his idea that you can take religion and replace it with art and culture. Um, it sounds like a good idea. In fact, I would advocate for religion being replaced by art and culture. I would actually like to see something like that happen. It just feels like it won't because it's well, for the main reason, if you look at the past 150 years of art history, you'll notice that art has become extremely intellectualized and kind of sterile and detached. And that's how museums are set up, and that's how people expect to see art when they go into a museum. So, two things are happening there. The institution is actually creating a sterile, kind of detached context for the artwork. But liberal man also has this idea in his head about what art should be, and it shouldn't be something that's moralizing or with some sort of like heavy-handed moral message. Art has become kind of tired of that, of representing religion and representing morals and ethics and how people should live and those types of things that religion usually does. So on both ends, you have this kind of expectation of what it should be, and to undo 150 years of that type of artwork. You think about Dadaism, minimalism, conceptualism. We've been through all of this, and they've actually gone in the direction quite purposely of being very, you know, very, like I said, kind of detached and intellectualized, conceptual. Um, so you, you you can't undo 150 years of that. It would seem if you walked into a museum and they were talking about love and anxiety and jealousy and those types of things, like you would be kind of put off by it. It would be very strange. It'd be like going to a sermon, and it would seem very strange, very kind of dissonant with what anybody, what a liberal man would expect, right? So that's the main reason I think his idea is good, but I don't think it would work. It would be very um, I don't know what the word is. It would just feel off. Now, I have a Van Gogh painting and a Monet painting behind me, and they do have these personal stories. It's the idea of provenance, right? They do have this narrative behind them that I do gain some meaning from. So I feel like I have a personal connection with it, but in terms of community, like I can't connect with a community through it. Like I don't feel like there's a community around it that I can be a part of, right? Like it's just personal stories that I take out of, in a personal context. I take bits and pieces of the narrative behind the paintings and apply it to my own life, but not in the sense of like directing me morally or ethically. Like it just doesn't happen that way, right? So that's the main reason I think that um, art remains kind of like an individualistic experience. You don't feel this communal sort of thing going on, right? Same when you walk into a museum, like you don't walk in there with a community. You're just a single person standing in front of a painting, um, just kind of taking it in. But you don't bow down to it. You don't pray to it. You don't hold hands with people and watch it. Like you don't sing hymns together in front of it. Like it's a very different thing. Sorry if I'm being a little bit confusing. I think I'm making sense. I'm not entirely sure. But I guess I'll know when I rewatch the video. But yeah, that's about it on that. Um, and the second thing that I thought was pretty interesting in the podcast was Alain de Botton said that he said that he's a psychotherapist, and they were talking about the real reason people do things. So he was in the session with a client, and he was asking the client why he or she was afraid of knives, and the immediate answer was, well, I could, she had the client had this obsession with knives, like this fear of knives. So the immediate answer was basically, well, I could cut myself with it. They're dangerous to have, but the button wanted to know the real reason why the client was afraid of knives. I forget what the real reason was, but there was this mother complex, something about the mother and the knife, and there was something going on there, and yeah, there was some sort of like trauma or something. I don't know. But it kind of led me to think about why I do what I do on my website, Spiralvent, and the connected social media. So I mainly talk about antinatalism and atheism, and I think people might wonder what it is I'm doing and why I'm doing it, the real reason I'm doing it. So my immediate answer is, I think I'm interested in ideas that are counterintuitive but true. And that's how I got into atheism. Atheism kind of had this, the four horsemen, and it was kind of big, and it was kind of moving along, and it kind of caught a lot of people up in that movement. And I read Richard Dawkins' book, the God Delusion, and I liked how the ideas were against religion, but they made sense. They were kind of, I wouldn't say they were counterintuitive. I think a lot of atheistic ideas are very intuitive, but religion just has this stranglehold on the way people think, or used to anyway, and maybe some people today, that when you hear things arguing against religion, it seems at first kind of counterintuitive, but when you look at it objectively, they make sense. And that's how I got into atheism. Antinatalism, I think, is kind of like the same thing. Now, I kind of transitioned from atheism to antinatalism, and atheism was kind of showed me that the universe is vast and big and ultimately indifferent to human beings. So that means there's no really meaning in life or anything like that. And that kind of naturally led me to antinatalism, which is counterintuitive, but it's also true. But it's also almost like a logical step from atheism to antinatalism. I'm saying that, most people would say, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not antinatalist, but I'm not religious either. I love life, and and you find people like Neil deGrasse Tyson, like making up these stories about how great life is, and we should feel lucky to be alive and things like that. I feel atheists have this kind of hole to fill. They've gotten rid of God, and now they have this big hole where God used to be that they have to fill with pro-life kind of narratives, right? So they come up with these explanations, these secular explanations that don't really make a lot of sense. They still don't cover the absence of meaning in life. So antinatalism kind of fits in there. It doesn't replace God. I'm not saying that. It doesn't become a religion. But it kind of explains the meaninglessness of life and the kind of hopelessness that there is in life when there is no cosmic meaning, right? So I like ideas that are counterintuitive, but they make sense. But why am I really doing it? I don't know. I feel like because of my mental health issues, I have a unique perspective on suffering. I'm not saying I'm the only one that suffers. I'm saying that I feel like I'm tuned into it more than a lot of people. And I'm not saying that to seem like I'm better or bigger or smarter or more clever than anyone. I'm just saying I feel like I'm more tuned into it than most people. And I feel it kind of flows into antinatalism. Like it just it naturally goes there. I just feel connected when I'm reading about antinatalism and talking about antinatalism. It feels like everything is clicking, right? Not everything, because I don't know everything, but the stuff that I do know, it seems to click, right? So I don't know if that's a real reason. You know, I mean, human psychology is very complicated. So it's difficult to tell what anybody's motives are for anything, really. There's a kind of sinister a kind of sinisterism that happens when you talk about psychological motive, right? Like, I mean, everybody thinks that if you have a psychological motive for something, it must be hidden and bad, right? It's kind of Freudian, right? Like it's you have these, because it's psychological, it's below the surface, and it's bad, right? It's the product of trauma, or it's the product of dark human motivations or something like that. So I don't know what the real reason is. That's my best explanation for why I do this blog. You can feel free to disagree with it, but that's my reason. Anyway, that's about it. Yeah, bye.